So, you know, you're a great bookend to Steve.
Yes.
Because Steve is talking about disruption on a mass scale and disruption that you've written about that happened a long time ago. But now, I mean, you really have the pulse of what's going on in Silicon Valley. And when anybody has news or a scoop or something they want to leak, you know, they have you on speed dial and
No, it's my hard work. It is not they want to leak and hand it to me. I work really hard.
that is true.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to say.
Right.
So what is going on in Silicon Valley now? What are the disruptive ideas, the disruptive technologies? Because, you know, I mean, I heard, you know, Steve, the mantra that I've heard for a while is social, local, mobile.
Yeah, mo-lo-so or solo-mo or whatever. Silicon Valley, speaking in poetry, is bad at that. And they try to create these buzzwords, and that's one of them. I think it's solo-mo or mo-lo-so, which is social, mobile, and local, which is kind of obvious. You know, it's going on with the phones.
So what's the new thing?
Mobile first. That's the favorite expression. If you see a startup that says mobile first and it has nothing to do with mobile, you should run in the opposite direction. But I think the concept of that these smartphones that we carry in our pockets, and you know, I have an iPhone, I carry a bunch of other phones, but that everything has to be designed.
You have the iPhone 5?
No, I'm too cheap. But I'll get it when Verizon's good and ready to give it to me. The concept is that this is where you have to design for everything. And you're seeing it in the troubles in the stock market, and Facebook and some of the others are over their lack of mobile strategy.
Right.
Or the fact that mobile, which is growing at a huge rate, I mean, I think it's 38% rate across the world. The internet's growing at about 8%, which is a good business, but kind of thing. But mobile and smartphones are growing at this astronomical rate. Tablets have gone from 2% to 29% in a very short amount of time. These are all mobile devices. And so everything has to be designed for mobile in mind. So anyone with a really big desktop business is in a little trouble. And I think you're seeing that in Facebook. I think that's the principal issue. And the problem is, while mobile usage goes up, the monetization, they've just figured out how to monetize the web, sort of. And now the monetization for mobile is quite low.
So let's talk about that, because that's relevant to my business, relevant to your business, right? Because the use of mobile is exponentially increasing. The dollars that come with it, or the willingness of people to pay for things on that platform, is much more slow.
Very slow, very small business. It's a growing business, but it's still, you know, much lower. I don't think you pay for almost anything except the exorbitant monies you pay to Verizon and those people. And even those in this country are subsidized. The phones, the cost of the phones themselves are subsidized. And so, you know, the business plans were just, excuse me, being figured out in the internet, on the desktop or on the laptop. And now you go to mobile and there's, you know, you're not going to get an ad on there. Are you going to do direct leads? Are you going to do purchasing? What are you going to do? And so everyone's rushing towards the concept. Google, search on the mobile phones is important. That's why they spent billions of dollars for Motorola. They had to get in this game of this game, because the only company that's done, I mean, Google's doing, listen, fantastically well. They can get whatever, they can make hovercrafts all day long with the business they're in. I always say, someone was like, oh, Google's in trouble in the mobile revolution. I said, that's like saying, you know, the Colombian drug ring has gotten into the restaurant business, is not doing so well in Cartagena. It doesn't really matter, because people use, you see my point. But you really have to think about, you know, your business in the mobile. Now, search is really important, so they buy Motorola's and do Android, spending a lot of money, not making a lot of money, but it's making a lot of money for search. And, you know, the only company that really is making most of the profits in the mobile space is Apple. Even though it doesn't have the biggest percentage, Android is growing quicker. Android, they're sort of giving them away in order to create a better business for search. And Apple is making a lion's share of the profits in tablets, and real profits, and which is why it's one of the most valuable companies in the world.
And they're a hardware company.
Well, they're in everything.
But so just backstage, for example, I mean, the things that people in our world talk about, they talk about the Facebook IPO. People are talking about Yahoo and Marissa Mayer now. I mean, is that what people are talking about?
Oh, yeah.
What can she do to resurrect Yahoo? And
You know, wonder CEO, that's what we're all looking for, right? The one that can turn around, and this one happens to be a woman, very attractive, pregnant, fantastic, you know, superwoman. You know, the problem is Yahoo. You know, the problem is Yahoo.
Why are you all laughing at that?
She's a terrifically talented woman. Because it's, you know, you sort of buy into these myths that one person can save a really troubled
woman. And it is a myth.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, she's super talented. The woman is like geeky beyond belief. One time, when I think she told me her billionth second birthday and was explaining it to me in algorithms, and I was just sort of like, you are really strange. But you know, she's super, super smart. That said, there's not super easy answers for what's going on there. You know, here's a company that's firmly in the Web 1.0 era that missed almost every opportunity that came along, YouTube, Google, everything. You know, just literally, whatever Yahoo didn't do, you should have done. You would have made a fortune. And then at the same time is providing products that are just not keeping up. They had Flickr. They blew that acquisition. Fantastic company, still a fantastic service run by a great guy right now. They're trying to revive it, but there's Instagram. You know what I mean? They didn't evolve. And so the question is, can one person turn that around? What can she create? What magical unicorn can she walk into Yahoo to make it turn around? That has happened. It happened really once. Apple, Steve Jobs, and he's special.
Well, speaking of another iconic company, I'm fascinated by Amazon. I mean, Amazon was a disruptive idea.
Right.
And now they seem to want to eat up everything and be in every consumer business to become this sort of digital Walmart for the world. How's that gone?
Very well. I mean, he's definitely still taking a lot of risks. If you really look at the numbers, like a lot of the numbers are, he's really out there on the edge. And he's really, I think, the real inheritor of Steve Jobs, if you think about a true visionary about changing things and doing things. You know, Kindle, again, is about something else. It's not about the Kindle device, so it's a very good device. The recent one is pretty cool. I use it, the size is really neat. But it's about selling things, you know, and selling things that he can deliver to you digitally, and it's a cheaper way for him to deliver it. And so he's in the retail business of selling things, and as many digital things as he can sell, the better. And so he doesn't want to get caught in a situation where he's beholden to Apple or Google and has to be in it too. It makes perfect sense for them to be in that business.
So what about and again, they're all these gigantic elephants, so they're like colliding into each other. So in the case of Apple and the iTunes Store, they're competing with Amazon on all kinds of fronts now.
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, it's an interesting, because people, yes, absolutely, they are. There's 4 really critical companies, I think, or 3.5 really. Apple, Google, Amazon. Facebook, absolutely, they have 1 billion customers. I mean, it's interesting that, you know, you talk about Facebook as being weakened when it's worth $50 billion and reaches 1 billion people. Like, that sucks, that's so terrible. And at the same time, it wasn't what was expected because the private company valuations got too large for all these companies. I really like I was teasing Brad and Eric backstage, the Priceline thing. It was like Groupon, you know what I mean? Like, and Priceline came back and Amazon came back. Well, did you miss it? It was so subtle. So what's interesting about it is that these 3 companies are really powerful because they are controlling distribution. They're important to you, they're important to me, on so many different levels of selling and buying things. And I think they're the fact that they're all US companies is super, you know, interesting, but they're really, between Google and Apple, Android and iOS, it's really, that's what's going on right now. I mean, Nokia's, I don't know what they're doing up in Waterloo, but, you know, I loved my BlackBerry and then I didn't because they didn't iterate and innovate. You know, Windows is, you can't, it's hard to say Microsoft is like the 98-pound weakling here, but they are. They're trying very hard with an excellent phone, by the way. Windows 8 is really interesting, but they can't, you know, they can't give them away, kind of thing. And so that's what's interesting is you have Microsoft sort of off to the side trying really hard to be number 3 in that market. You've got Amazon with their devices, but these are the companies you really have to look for true power going forward, I think.
To go even more macro, to talk about open systems versus closed systems. Apple is a closed system.
Oh, whatever. I'm sorry, I hate this argument.
Okay, well let's talk, so rebut the argument. Make the argument and then rebut it.
Okay, Apple, a closed system. It definitely, it's a soup to nuts kind of thing. But guess what Microsoft's about to announce? A soup to nuts Surface. What do you think Surface is? They finally, it's a great moment and people aren't noticing, but Microsoft was sort of the ultimate, Walt talked about it yesterday, component business. You had a piece from Intel, a piece from Dell, a piece from here. Now Microsoft's doing the soup to nuts thing. Same thing.
Why would I want to, I mean, no
why would
offense,
you buy
but why would I want to be part of a Microsoft closed system?
Well, it's not closed necessarily.
Yeah.
Now, in Apple's case, it's a closed system in that you use Apple things, and some things, like on Apple TV, you can use Hulu now, you can't use Amazon. You can't, I mean, it's definitely, you have to pick.
And I have the Kindle app on my iPad.
Right. Well, Apple has the most of the apps. But it's really hard to argue something with 720,000 apps is closed. There's not much that's away from, you know what I mean? You can't get to. And so that's an interesting thing. Obviously, Google is more open, but it's not as curated. I mean, people tend to prefer curation. Some do. Others do not. They want sort of the open. You know, I guess the joke that Apple was making is if you really want to get porn on your apps, go to Google. You know, kind of thing. That was a clever marketing attempt. And it's actually somewhat true. So it's not closed or open. These are major platforms battling it out for all kinds of things. And again, you have to really go into an Apple-Google, you know, dichotomy if you really want to do it.
So what is the Google, apart from search, and again, as you'd say, I mean, there's not that much apart from search.
Oh, they have a lot of things.
Well, so what's next?
Oh, I think Android's a huge success for them.
Oh, of course, right.
I think it's been a huge, and it was a brilliant shift into that, and they've done a nice job with it. I mean, they're definitely facing issues of angering Samsung. Like if you're Samsung, when that Motorola thing was announced, we happened to be in Korea, and the Koreans are hugely polite, but they almost like hit the roof was like, this is very bad. You know what I mean? And we were like, oh my God, they're like freaking out. So Walt and I were there, and so, you know, if you're Samsung and you're relying on the Android system, you have to think twice. You know, you have to go, wait a second. And Samsung is arguably the most successful Android phone maker. Right. They really do make the best phones. You know, if you're Amazon, you know what you do? You take Android and you strip it. There's not a sense of Google in the Kindle. That's an Android development platform that they're using. But they've stripped everything out, and they're taking Google at their word and putting there's not very few Google things on. There's no Google Play. There's none of Google's many. You know, Google's sort of, it's a little Microsoftian, you know, extend from search. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to get you to do, you know, everything is your Google profile, everything is your Google, you know, you're on Chrome, it works better if you sign in to your Gmail, and it works better if you join whatever Google Plus is. You know what? It's not a social network. Now they're pivoting away. You know, now we're not competing with Facebook, even though that's what they'd been saying the whole year before. Now they're Google Plus. It's your friend. You know, like I don't want, you know, the friends like these kind of thing.
Well, it's more exclusive Facebook. Is that the idea?
No, I don't know what it is. It's not a social network. It's an identity play for Google. They want to own your identity on the web so that you sign into things, you use their mail.
Okay, so that's the question. Okay, right. So if everybody wants to own your identity,
right? Google really wants to own your identity.
Well,
Amazon just wants to sell you crap. You know what I mean? Like, and Apple doesn't quite want to own your identity. It's not that aggressive in the identity space at all. Google and Facebook are duking it out in that market.
But the idea that Google really truly wants to own your identity feels like a threat to Apple.
Yes, absolutely. It should be a threat to perhaps the human race. But you know, I have to preface it. I am married to a Google executive for 14 years, and I happen to be gay, so that's 97 years, and straight people talk. And I am frightened of them a little bit, honestly. Like every night I'm like, should I go to sleep or keep an eye open, or what are they up to? So, you know, I always joke, I was like, I know there's a lizard inside you if I cut you, you know that V? If I cut, I'm like always like, I'll just cut you a little bit to see if there's a lizard in there. Anyway, no, in any case, that's my crazy thing. You know, they have a lot of control over a lot of the internet. The internet is Google in many ways, and so while it's a really incredible company in so many ways, they're doing all that cool car stuff, the glasses stuff. It's still a very dangerous thing for one company to have this much information in one place.
So
I say that a lot.
Not to again get philosophical on you, but that issue between security and convenience, right?
Right.
We want when we go to websites, we want the website to know who we are, remember who we are. At the same time, we give up a certain amount of privacy for that, a certain amount of security. All of our privacy. And maybe
willingly.
Well, and maybe there's a generational argument. I mean, I've heard people say, well, millennials don't really care because they live their lives transparently and they don't mind that some organization has all of this information. Eric Schmidt famously said, well, if you're worried about your privacy, maybe you shouldn't be doing the things that you want to keep private.
Right, and then people just splayed his private life all over the place and he was pissed, but that's just another issue.
Okay.
I'm interviewing Eric tomorrow night in New York at the 92nd Street Y.
We won't get into that. But what is that? So, but that's a gigantic battle in a way, and that's something that the consumer, in effect, will decide. Like, hey, I don't want Google to know that much about me. I don't want Apple to know that much about me. That's something creepy when I order one song and they, know
they recommend.
Yeah.
Well, except that you've given up your privacy. I mean, it's really interesting. People, willingly do this. They want to do this. They want to share. Humans want to share, philosophically speaking. They never shut up. You know what I mean? They're constantly talking to each other. And Google and companies like that have just amplified the human race. So there's this massive conversation going on. And what's interesting about it is that can you prevent humans from being human? And Google's just taking advantage of it. My issue around any company, I'm one of these people who are absolutely convinced we're on the edge of like Terminator kind of thing. I love that movie. It informs everything about my life. I can't help but love Arnold Schwarzenegger for that. But anyway, for that movie. But when you think about it, you are willingly giving it up for something else that's so valuable to you, which is the ability to communicate globally around the world, to share things, to tweet. I mean, when was the last time you read something in a newspaper and didn't tweet it? Not everybody tweets, but I got to tell you, at some point, I'm going to go full hermit. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause, like, I'd like to read something and not say, hey, I just read this, or I just did this. And people, it's not millennials. Everybody likes to do it.
Right.
I just think millennials are used to doing it, and they're comfortable, and they're at ease in the environment.
But that notion, right, at some time, I'd like to read a newspaper article and not feel
Well,
like
I don't
have
read a
to tweet
newspaper,
it.
but okay. Yeah.
But I mean, it can be oppressive, right? I mean, people in our business, it's like, my God, everything you do has to be on a different platform,
Yeah.
and you have to tweet about it, and you have to blog about it.
Yes, you do.
I mean, it's a relentless
Yes,
taskmaster. And by the way, who's that interested?
Well, I am, but I don't know about you. I mean, I don't know. I think it's the same thing as you were doing. It's just there's more opportunity to get your word out to the right people who are wanting to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very exhausting to old-line reporters, for sure. And they're like, this friggin' tweeting. I hate these tweeting. But it's a way to reach people. So what's the difference? You used to reach people through a newsstand. So you now have to do a little bit of the heavy. It's sort of like pumping gas, right? Like before they used to pump your gas. Now when's the last time someone pumped your gas? This is the way it is going to be, is that everything you do becomes transparent. And whether that's good or not is a big topic for society, but it seems like, and I always use this expression, the kids seem to love it. So you might want to get on board. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really matter if you like it or don't like it. You can debate it all you want. It's just, how do you conduct yourself with this kind of society? I think it's good because people, I think constant communication, even though it can be babble, kind of just like noise, is always good for countries. You see what happened around the world. It's very hard to be intolerant if there's constant communication. It's also very easy to trick people. So there's upsides and downsides to all of it. But to me, it's always a good thing to have these tools. We're doing a mobile conference in New York in a couple weeks, and we're bringing voices in, global voices around the world. We have like a subsistence farmer in India talking about how they finally have good crop prices because of a smartphone. A nurse in Brazil who's able to reach people with healthcare information. There's all these fantastic stories, and then there's the bad stories.
So we have just a little bit more time. Is there anything that you've seen lately that has just surprised you and gobsmacked you? Like, my God, this is the new thing that 2 years from now or a year from now, people are really going to be talking about.
I think the thing I'm most interested in right now is sensors. I'm very interested in sensors everywhere. These things are dropping in price, and screens everywhere, where the frigging Star Trekkies were right. Like, they really were. They dressed up in those kooky costumes and they embarrassed themselves, but you know what? They were 100% right. This is the communicator. This will be everything. It will be medical. It will be everything. So I think sensors everywhere on your clothes, in the place, with pollution, with air, with parking, with, I make fun of a lot of some of the Google Glass devices, which I call the anti-dating glasses. But the car is a huge concept. It's a huge concept, the idea of a self-driving car. It's a very important idea of using data to really solve some energy problems, to solve traffic problems, to solve highway deaths. So, I mean, I think sensors everywhere is something that, again, we have to think about, because then we're a fully monitored society. But to me, they're so cheap in price, and I think they're going to be in everything, and they're going to talk to these.
Everyone who came in here tonight got a sensors.
Well, I don't know. There was a moment when you were a little asleep. We shipped you all. Google's doing it, and they're going to be, you're going to help them figure things out. But this is your sensor. This is your best friend. And whenever I end something, I always say, well, I leave you to your own devices. But really, that's really the situation now, because this is, again, the best relationship you're going to have in many, many ways, sad and pathetic as it is. Okay. You know what I mean? My kids are nice too, but